I'm Jen Sway. I'm a health and life coach empowering women to break through their fears, be confident in their authentic self, and create thriving relationships along the way. This is the Find Your Freedom podcast. Hi friends, welcome back to the Find Your Freedom podcast. I'm Jen, and today I have a short episode for you on self-pity versus self-compassion. So today's episode is just going to define what is pity and how it relates to self-pity, as well as self-compassion and what does compassion actually mean. So the purpose of this is to just give you guys a different perspective on the way that you are speaking to yourself, the way that you are speaking about your life and explaining it, kind of relating to it, so that you can get out of complaining all the time. And later this week, I will be covering more topics on this in the realm of how to stop complaining and create solutions. So today is kind of a precursor to that, where we're just going to quickly define this. I'm going to give you some examples on how you might be in self-pity, or as you might be familiar with the concept of throwing yourself a pity party. Yeah, we're going to go over all of that so you can see if that's what you're doing, and then how you can also use compassion instead for that. I also wanted to bring up this topic because I think whenever I say like, hey, be compassionate towards yourself, how can you be more compassionate towards yourself? It's a little bit, I don't want to say like woo-woo, but it's a little like it goes over people's heads and they're not exactly sure what I mean by like compassion. And I think it gets mixed up with pity a lot of times. And I actually, when I Googled pity and the definition of it, compassion came up like right next to it. And so even there's like a lot of overlap where people kind of can confuse what does pity and compassion mean. And as this relates to yourself, if you think being compassionate towards yourself is to just allow yourself to go into a deep pity party and that's not serving you, and you want to change that, you actually want to create something a little bit more useful, well, this is the episode for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to start by defining pity. So according to Google, as we know, the universal answer to everything, pity is feeling bad for someone's misfortune and their suffering. And it's kind of like sympathy. It can also create a feeling of regret, and it can also be a cause of regret. Compassion, on the other hand, creates motivation for somebody to go out of their way to relieve suffering. So the reason why they're similar is because if you feel pity, sometimes you will also feel compassion and do acts of compassion. So I think a lot of people, especially if you consider yourself an empath, somebody who feels deeply for other people's feelings, whether that's happiness and joy, but most oftentimes like sadness and misfortune, right? If you feel really deeply for that, you can actually kind of put yourself in their shoes in that sense, then you'll probably want to act out of compassion and like help them, right? You want to make them feel better. So that's kind of how all of these things are related. But I want to give you this really simple perspective as it relates to self-pity and self-compassion. Pity I see as stagnant versus compassion I see as dynamic. Meaning pity, you kind of stay in the same space, there's not really any movement there, versus compassion, as you heard in the definition, compassion has motivation to it. It has that added dynamic feeling of there is growth here, there is something to do, there is a way to get out of it, there is always an option, if you will. So I'm going to give you two examples of how I see self-pity and self-compassion play out in my life, in my own experiences, and also in my clients' experiences and things that they have had to work through in order to create true self-compassion. So let's say that you're feeling really tired, maybe you just got back from a long day of work, maybe you don't even really like your job, you're feeling bad, or maybe you feel really bad because there's people at your work that you don't like. Maybe you're feeling bad and because you feel tired and you feel so exhausted and you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to bed really late and you're telling yourself like, life sucks, this is awful, oh my gosh, kind of like, I don't know why I'm doing this, there's no purpose in this, everyone's just a piece of shit, right? It's the whole boohoo poor me type of complaining. And I know we're all familiar with that. I will be the first person to admit that I have done that for many, many years. So Yes, be able to admit that to yourself. Okay, it's okay to complain every now and then, but this is where pity comes in. You're telling yourself it's okay to complain, that life sucks, that this is just your way to vent, right? It's the idea of we just want to vent, and we make ourselves do that thinking that it's going to make us feel better or just to get it off our chest. Sometimes that is all you need, but I think more often than not, we just get in the habit of complaining, of throwing ourselves pity parties for anything that doesn't go our way, and then we keep feeling bad about it. Right? It's this whole cycle of like thought pattern of like, it's okay to complain. It's okay to throw yourself a pity party. If you complain and if you vent to somebody, then you'll feel better. And then you'll do it. You'll keep feeling, you might feel a little bit better after, which reinforces this idea that like, yes, this is okay. But at the end of the day, you're just going to create a lot of these moments where you're feeling bad, right? You're feeling bad about feeling bad. Versus in a compassionate way, maybe you are really tired. Let's use this example again of like, maybe you don't really like your work or something happened at work. And maybe you went to bed really late for the last week, right? And you haven't been getting enough sleep and you feel bad about that. And instead of telling yourself like life sucks and like you can just throw yourself a pity party and complain and cry and whatever, you kind of just accept that those things happen, right? You accept the fact that you went to bed late. You accept the fact that, people said things to you at work, or maybe it was really difficult and you couldn't really grasp the hanging of things. And you just kind of accept that today was one of those days that you just weren't your best self, and that's okay. Right? You accept that happens, and instead of just complaining and venting and feeling bad about it, you actually decide to give yourself love. You decide to give yourself rest, right? Instead of staying up all night again and then feeling tired the next day, you actually let yourself go to bed early. Maybe you journal instead of venting to somebody about it and having it kind of lead to nowhere, but you journal with the intention of letting your feelings out and understanding where all these emotions are coming from, right? You basically use all these tools and resources that you need in order to self-soothe. And you do these actions from a compassionate standpoint because remember, compassion is using this motivation to relieve suffering instead of allowing it to just continue. Your intention here is actually to relieve suffering. So all the actions that you're taking out of this is to make yourself feel genuinely better. It's like a baby who's crying and the mom is just like holding them and they're just like, oh, this is so bad. I feel so bad for you. Oh, like poor little thing. You're just crying, right? And kind of like rocking them back and forth, right? It's a difference between that and letting the baby learn how to self-soothe, where they actually like calm themselves down, or the mom does like all these other things to help them like calm down, right? It's not just like, oh, this was so sucky, I feel so bad for you, right? No, that's patronizing, and you're almost like patronizing yourself when you feel pity towards yourself. So instead of doing that, actually using that motivation of compassion to make yourself feel better. The other example I want to give you is when it comes to stress eating. And let's take it from a standpoint of like you just got home from work or school, you feel awful, and you eat a whole pack of Oreos, or you sit down and just start eating a pint of ice cream and crying and whatever. Okay, cool. So the pity response is that, oh my gosh, I just ate a whole pint of ice cream, I just ate a sleep of Oreos, I feel like shit. I feel so ashamed of myself. Why did I let myself do this? Oh my gosh, I'm so fat. You feel guilty. I'm gonna go on a diet tomorrow, right? Like, I need to do all these things. And a lot of times, what happens is people feel worse about doing the act, right? They go and binge on these foods that they see are quote unquote bad. And then they actually eat more later, right? Like you feel so bad, you're just like, fuck it. Like I just ruined my whole day. I just ruined this diet. I'm like not gonna be able to do this anymore. Might as well just like eat the rest of the pint. And so that's a pity response, honestly. Instead of a compassionate response, when you do use food to console yourself, which, by the way, is not necessarily a bad thing, because we have to understand that food is multidimensional, and that is one of the functions that we can get from it is comfort, right? Like, it's just part of it. But if we can see it from a compassionate point of view of like, this is just something that can happen, and if you did it out of this intention of stress and you weren't really thinking about it, like, hey, you can feel bad about it, and you can accept that it happened. And then again, from a compassionate standpoint, choose to nourish your body afterwards, right? Choosing to nourish your body, actually taking the time to relieve the stress, to actually understand where is the stress coming from. And then, I think the classic example or like cliche example might be like, go do a face mask and take a bath and just feel better, right? Go journal about your feelings. But whatever it is, like going for a walk, dance, like freaking masturbate, go have sex, like, I don't know, whatever it is that you need, that your body needs to feel better, right? Go ahead and do that. You can also choose to nourish your body afterward with food. So maybe you did eat a whole sleeve of ice cream or a whole sleeve of Oreos or ice cream, and then you're like, you know what, my body actually still needs dinner. It still needs to have some protein or like hot foods, and like I want to cook and like actually make my body feel nourished. That is an act of compassion. That is an act of love for yourself. So at the end of it, I hope what you guys got out of this episode is that when you choose compassion and the actions that you take out of compassion, true self-compassion comes from a place of love and the intention to heal and this intention to relieve your suffering. Versus if you're doing things and using this excuse of like, oh, I'm showing compassion to myself by eating more ice cream and by, just venting to these people, check yourself to see if that is actually coming from an intention of compassion or if it's actually just part of this pity party that you're throwing yourself. Alright friends, so that's everything for today. I hope you stay tuned for the next episode coming out later this week, which I'm really excited for. It's going to be all about how to stop complaining and create your solutions instead. I'll be covering resiliency and victimhood. I'll also be talking about how to stop the drama in your life by using my favorite mental reframe tool, the model. I'll also be touching upon the Cartman drama cycle, which if you guys don't know about, it's incredible to get yourself out of that mind drama and just any drama in your life. So you don't want to miss out. Subscribe to this podcast, turn on notifications, and follow me on Instagram at JensWayHealth for more helpful content. I will see you guys later. Have a great rest of your day.